I stand before you today not merely to recount an event, but to reflect upon leadership, strength, and our responsibility to uphold the values that define America. Harsh criticism of Donald Trump's conduct during his meeting with Vladimir Putin was not just a passing remark meant for entertainment or shock value. It was a deliberate and forceful condemnation of what he perceived as a failure of leadership on the world stage. Schwarzenegger has always been a man of strong words and bold imagery, and in this instance, he drew upon his reputation as both a political figure and cultural icon to drive home the seriousness of his concerns. His statement that Trump stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy, carried an undeniable sting, not simply because of its colorful language, but because it painted a vivid picture of a president appearing submissive rather than strong in the face of a rival power. To Schwarzenegger, who has long admired toughness and determination as core virtues, seeing the leader of the United States act in a way that suggested weakness was profoundly disturbing. The phrase wet noodle itself is telling. It conjures an image of something limp, spineless, and without structure, qualities that stand in stark contrast to the commanding presence expected of an American president, especially when meeting with an adversary such as Vladimir Putin. By invoking that metaphor, Schwarzenegger sought to highlight the absence of firmness, the lack of resistance, and the overall weakness he saw in Trump's demeanor. Moreover, calling him a fanboy took the critique even further, suggesting that instead of acting as an equal or even as a rival to Putin, Trump appeared eager to please him, as though he were in awe rather than in command. This was not just a stylistic jab. It was an accusation that Trump had diminished the stature of the United States by placing admiration over assertiveness. Schwarzenegger's criticism resonates deeply because of his own background. As a former governor, he understands the weight of leadership, and as someone who grew up in post-war Austria, he knows the dangers of appeasement and the importance of strength in political life. His choice of words was designed to capture public attention, but beneath the theatrics was a serious point in global politics. Perception matters. A president who appears weak before a powerful adversary risks not only embarrassing himself, but also undermining the confidence of allies and emboldening rivals. Schwarzenegger was not merely mocking Trump, he was warning that such displays could have lasting consequences for America's position in the world. His remarks also carried an emotional undertone of disappointment. Schwarzenegger, a Republican himself, clearly expected more from a president of his party. He referenced Ronald Reagan's iconic moment when he challenged Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down this wall, a reminder of the courage and conviction that defined American leadership during the Cold War. By contrasting Reagan's firm words with Trump's perceived passivity, Schwarzenegger underscored just how far he felt the standard of presidential strength had fallen. In essence, his criticism was not only about Trump's behavior at a single press conference, it was about a broader concern that America's image of resilience and leadership was being eroded. Schwarzenegger's harsh words were intended to provoke reflection and, perhaps, outrage. His choice to frame Trump as a wet noodle and a fanboy was more than colorful language. It was a strategic move to spark public discussion about the qualities we expect in a leader. He reminded Americans that the presidency is not about deference, but about strength, not about admiration for power, but about the responsible use of power. His criticism was therefore not just an attack on Trump, it was a defense of the principles he believes America should embody when it faces the world. When Arnold Schwarzenegger accused Donald Trump of betrayal after his meeting with Vladimir Putin, he did so with a sense of urgency and gravity that went beyond partisan politics. For Schwarzenegger, this was not merely about one man's personal conduct at a press conference. It was about the trust placed in the president by the American people and the sacred duty to defend national institutions. His charge that Trump had literally sold out America's intelligence community, the justice system, and the country itself was a powerful condemnation that cut to the heart of what it means to hold the highest office in the land. To call the president a betrayer is not something Schwarzenegger did lightly. It was his way of making clear that he believed Trump's actions had undermined the very foundations of American strength. The intelligence community represents one of the cornerstones of national security. It gathers information, assesses threats, and works tirelessly, often in secrecy, to protect the American people. When Trump publicly questioned or downplayed the findings of his own intelligence agencies in favor of giving credence to Putin's denials, Schwarzenegger saw this as an act of betrayal. By siding with the word of a foreign adversary over the assessments of American experts, Trump not only disrespected their work, but also weakened the credibility of institutions designed to keep the nation safe. To Schwarzenegger, this was not a minor disagreement. It was a dangerous precedent that told the world America might not even trust itself. His accusation extended to the justice system as well, an institution that represents fairness, accountability, and the rule of law. When Trump's statements appeared to dismiss or undermine investigations into Russian interference, Schwarzenegger believed he was compromising the integrity of justice itself. For a man like Schwarzenegger, who built his career on discipline and accountability, the idea of a president diminishing the role of justice was unacceptable. It gave the impression that loyalty to personal image or political allies mattered more than loyalty to the law and to the truth. This, in his view, was another layer of betrayal, not just to the system, but to every citizen who relies on it to function impartially. The strongest part of Schwarzenegger's statement, however, came when he said that Trump had betrayed the country. This accusation encompassed everything the intelligence community, the justice system, and the expectations of the American people. A president is meant to act as a defender of national interests, a representative of American strength, and a guardian of the Constitution. By appearing weak before Putin and disregarding the advice and findings of his own government, Trump was, in Schwarzenegger's eyes, abandoning those responsibilities. Betrayal here was not simply about words spoken in a press conference. It was about what those words symbolized. They symbolized a president who, instead of standing up for America, appeared to defer to someone who has long been cast as a geopolitical rival. Schwarzenegger's use of the word betrayal also carried an emotional weight. As an immigrant who came to America and achieved his dreams, he has often spoken about the gratitude and loyalty he feels toward the country that gave him so much opportunity. To him, America represents freedom, resilience, and strength. Watching a president disregard the very institutions that embody those values must have felt like a personal insult to the ideals he cherishes. By calling out betrayal, he was not only pointing fingers at Trump, but also appealing to Americans to recognize that their values were at stake. In the end, Schwarzenegger's accusation was about drawing a moral line. A president can make mistakes, can disagree with advisors, and can adopt different policies, but the one thing he cannot do is betray the trust of the people and the integrity of the nation's institutions. By framing Trump's behavior in those terms, Schwarzenegger sent a clear and powerful message. Loyalty to America must always come before loyalty to personal pride or admiration for foreign leaders. To him, the failure to uphold that principle was nothing less than betrayal. When Arnold Schwarzenegger contrasted Donald Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin to Ronald Reagan's leadership, he was not merely invoking nostalgia for a past Republican president. He was underscoring a powerful example of what true strength and conviction in leadership should look like. Reagan's legacy, particularly his firm stance against the Soviet Union during the Cold War, continues to serve as a benchmark for decisive presidential action. By drawing attention to Reagan's famous words, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, Schwarzenegger was reminding Americans that moments of international confrontation demand clarity, courage, and the willingness to defend core values, even in the face of immense opposition. For him, Trump's behavior in Alaska stood in sharp contrast to that historical example. Reagan's leadership was defined by his ability to project confidence not only to the American people but also to the world. In 1987, when he delivered those words at the Berlin Wall, he knew the risks, Critics warned him that such a statement could escalate tensions, yet Reagan understood that strength often comes from moral clarity. He spoke directly to Mikhail Gorbachev, challenging him publicly, and in doing so, he sent a signal to the world that the United States would not waver in its commitment to freedom and democracy. That moment became symbolic of American resolve, and it played a role in shaping the outcome of the Cold War. Schwarzenegger, who admired Reagan both as a leader and as a fellow icon of conservative politics, looked to that example as the gold standard for presidential conduct. Trump's demeanor with Putin, on the other hand, represented the opposite in Schwarzenegger's eyes. Instead of challenging a powerful adversary, Trump appeared deferential, avoiding confrontation and declining to address pressing issues head-on. Where Reagan had projected strength, Trump projected submission. Where Reagan had inspired hope and unity, Trump left many feeling embarrassed and uncertain. The comparison between the two moments could not have been starker, and Schwarzenegger used that contrast to highlight the decline he saw in the standard of leadership. This contrast was not just about words, it was about posture, presence, and the message sent to allies and enemies alike. Reagan stood as a man confident in his role as the representative of the free world. He embraced the idea that leadership requires standing firm, even when it is uncomfortable or dangerous. Trump, by comparison, seemed to shy away from confrontation, preferring to emphasize personal rapport with Putin rather than standing tall for American principles. To Schwarzenegger, this was not diplomacy, it was weakness disguised as friendliness. For Schwarzenegger, invoking Reagan also carried symbolic weight within the Republican Party. Reagan remains one of the most respected figures in conservative history, someone whose vision and policies shaped an era. By contrasting Trump to Reagan, Schwarzenegger was not only criticizing Trump, but also issuing a challenge to Republicans themselves to remember the example of a leader who stood fearlessly for freedom rather than one who appeared willing to compromise American dignity on the international stage. In essence, Schwarzenegger's comparison was a reminder of what leadership should be. True leadership does not bend under pressure, nor does it seek approval from adversaries. It demands honesty, conviction, and the ability to inspire confidence at home and abroad. By drawing this contrast, Schwarzenegger highlighted his disappointment, but also offered a roadmap back to the kind of leadership that once defined America's role in the world. His message was clear. Reagan embodied the strength that commands respect, while Trump, in his meeting with Putin, failed to live up to that example. Arnold Schwarzenegger's concerns about weak leadership in Donald Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin went beyond the surface of political rivalry. For him, the problem was not simply that the president spoke awkwardly or missed an opportunity to deliver a sharp soundbite. It was that Trump projected an image of fragility at a time when strength was needed most. In Schwarzenegger's eyes, the world stage is unforgiving. Every action, every gesture, and every word from the President of the United States sends signals not just to allies, but also to adversaries who are always watching for signs of hesitation. When Trump appeared to stand timidly beside Putin, avoiding confrontation and failing to assert America's dominance, Schwarzenegger saw it as a dangerous display of weak leadership that could have consequences far beyond that moment. Weak leadership, as Schwarzenegger framed it, is not merely about optics. It undermines the very authority of the United States. The president is not only the commander-in-chief, but also the symbolic embodiment of the nation's power and values. If that leader projects deference to a rival, it risks creating the perception that America is willing to bend or compromise where it should stand firm. In the highly competitive arena of global politics, perception often shapes reality. Rivals may see weakness as an invitation to push harder, to test boundaries, and to exploit divisions. For Schwarzenegger, Trump's behavior at the summit was exactly the kind of posture that emboldens adversaries like Putin while leaving allies uncertain about America's reliability. Another aspect of weak leadership highlighted by Schwarzenegger was the failure to use one's platform effectively. Summits between presidents are rare and important opportunities to set the tone for international relations. Reagan used such opportunities to make bold statements that reshaped the dialogue between East and West. In contrast, Trump's refusal to press Putin on critical issues such as Russian interference, aggression in Eastern Europe, or human rights abuses struck Schwarzenegger as a wasted opportunity. It signaled not strength but passivity, a willingness to stand silently rather than seize the moment to reaffirm American principles. To Schwarzenegger, this was not just a missed chance, it was a dereliction of duty. Weak leadership also has a corrosive effect on domestic morale. The American people look to their president not only to make decisions, but to inspire confidence in the nation's ability to lead the world. When Trump stood by Putin without challenging him, many Americans felt embarrassed rather than proud. Schwarzenegger tapped into this emotional response by describing the scene as humiliating, as though the president had abandoned the posture of authority expected of him. Such moments, in Schwarzenegger's view, chip away at the nation's unity and diminish its global standing. Schwarzenegger's concerns boiled down to one central idea: the President of the United States must never appear weak in the presence of a rival power. Leadership requires more than diplomacy. It requires the ability to project strength, even in moments of tension. For Schwarzenegger, Trump's behavior in Alaska failed that test. Instead of demonstrating firmness, he conveyed fragility. Instead of showing resolve, he displayed hesitation. And instead of reinforcing America's role as a global leader, he cast doubt on it. To Schwarzenegger, this was the essence of weak leadership, and the danger it posed was too great to ignore. When Arnold Schwarzenegger spoke about Donald Trump's conduct in his meeting with Vladimir Putin, one of his deepest concerns centered on the defense of American institutions. For Schwarzenegger, the institutions of democracy, the intelligence community, the justice system, the checks and balances of government are the backbone of the United States. They provide stability, continuity, and credibility both at home and abroad. His outrage was not only about Trump's personal demeanor, but about the impression that the president was willing to undermine or even disregard these institutions in order to avoid conflict with a foreign adversary. To Schwarzenegger, this was not just a political misstep, it was a fundamental breach of responsibility. The intelligence community in particular became a flashpoint in his criticism. For decades, intelligence agencies have provided presidents with critical information to navigate threats and shape foreign policy. They are staffed by professionals who often put their lives at risk to gather knowledge and protect the nation. When Trump appeared to downplay or dismiss their findings regarding Russian interference in U.S. elections, Schwarzenegger saw it as an insult to their work and a betrayal of their sacrifices. If the President of the United States does not stand firmly behind the people tasked with defending the nation in the shadows, then their credibility, and by extension, the nation's security, is weakened. In Schwarzenegger's mind, defending these institutions is non-negotiable. Equally troubling to him was the undermining of the justice system. America's legal institutions are built on the principles of fairness, accountability, and the rule of law. They are designed to ensure that no one, not even the president, is above scrutiny. By speaking in ways that suggested investigations into Russian involvement were exaggerated, partisan, or unnecessary, Trump appeared to weaken the authority of the system itself. Schwarzenegger believed that this diminished faith in the impartiality of justice, encouraging people to view it as a political tool rather than as a neutral arbiter. For a man like Schwarzenegger, who often spoke about discipline, accountability, and the importance of rules in his career and political life, this was particularly alarming. Beyond specific agencies, Schwarzenegger's broader point was about respect for the entire structure of American governance. Institutions exist to preserve democracy, to provide checks against abuse of power, and to ensure continuity even when leaders come and go. If a president publicly undermines them or elevates the words of a foreign leader above their work, it erodes trust. That erosion does not happen overnight, but it can weaken the democratic fabric over time, leaving the country vulnerable to internal division and external manipulation. For Schwarzenegger, who often spoke of his deep gratitude for the opportunities America gave him, this lack of respect for institutions was both disappointing and dangerous. At its core, Schwarzenegger's defense of American institutions was a defense of American values. Strength comes not from one individual, but from the collective systems that uphold truth, justice, and freedom. Leaders may change, policies may shift, but the institutions remain as the guardians of democracy. When he accused Trump of failing to defend them, Schwarzenegger was issuing a warning: if America's own president does not stand up for its institutions, how can the world be expected to respect them? In his eyes, defending institutions is not an option. It is the president's highest duty, one that must never be compromised for personal comfort or political gain. Arnold Schwarzenegger's call for stronger leadership in response to Donald Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin was not just a criticism of one moment in history. It was a broader appeal to the values and expectations Americans should demand from their leaders. For Schwarzenegger, leadership is about more than holding office. It is about embodying resilience, courage, and integrity in times of challenge. When he watched Trump stand beside Putin without asserting American strength, he saw not only weakness, but also a dangerous void where strong leadership should have been. His call was directed not only at Trump, but at the entire political system, and the citizens who empower it. America must insist on leaders who stand tall, even under pressure, and who never forget that their first loyalty is to the nation. Stronger leadership, in Schwarzenegger's view, begins with moral clarity. A president must be unshakable in defending the truth, even when it is inconvenient or politically costly. In the case of the Alaska summit, he believed Trump should have firmly acknowledged Russian interference and addressed it directly in Putin's presence. That act alone would have demonstrated courage and conviction, showing the world that America does not bend to intimidation or deception. Instead, Trump's reluctance to challenge Putin publicly left the impression of compromise, a moment that Schwarzenegger saw as a failure of leadership. To him, stronger leadership requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable realities head on rather than hiding from them. Another element of strong leadership, as Schwarzenegger emphasized, is the ability to inspire confidence at home. Americans look to their president not just as a policymaker, but as a symbol of the nation's identity. When a leader projects strength, citizens feel reassured and unified. When a leader appears submissive or confused, the public grows uneasy. Schwarzenegger understood this dynamic from his own political career in California, where his larger-than-life persona often served to rally people even in moments of difficulty. Watching Trump, however, he felt that this symbolic responsibility was being neglected. Instead of projecting the pride and power of the American people, Trump's performance suggested deference, leaving citizens embarrassed rather than inspired. For Schwarzenegger, stronger leadership would restore that sense of pride by showing the world that America's president speaks with confidence and acts with unwavering purpose. On the global stage, stronger leadership also means defending alliances and standing firm against adversaries. Schwarzenegger's criticism implied that when Trump failed to confront Putin, he signaled weakness not only to Russia, but also to America's allies who rely on the United States for stability and protection. True leadership requires consistency and reliability, qualities that assure partners they can trust America's word. By appearing to waver in front of Putin, Trump cast doubt on that reliability. Schwarzenegger's call for stronger leadership was therefore also a call to restore faith in America's commitments abroad, reminding the world that the U.S. remains a pillar of freedom and democracy. Schwarzenegger's message carried a moral challenge to all future leaders, regardless of party affiliation. Stronger leadership is not about personal popularity or short-term political victories. It is about legacy, about how a leader's actions will be remembered when history is written. Reagan's defiance at the Berlin Wall became an enduring symbol of strength because it reflected a leader's willingness to take risks for freedom. Trump's moment in Alaska, by contrast, became a cautionary tale of hesitation. By calling for stronger leadership, Schwarzenegger was urging America to return to a standard of boldness, honesty, and integrity, a standard that refuses to settle for weakness when the stakes are high.